Hello students, welcome to the lecture on employee learning, and after the lecture we will be able to learn the following objectives. Understand the concept of learning, define the principles of learning, explain the learning process, describe the reinforcement theory, explain the social learning theory, describe the adult learning theory, explain the expectancy theory, understand information processing theory, describe the learning cycles. Let's start with a brief introduction to employee learning. A learning theory is the process by which humans and animals obtain knowledge and skills. The three basic categories used to classify learning theories include behaviorism, cognitivism, and constructivism. The wide range of different learning theories is a result of the common variables present when learning is taking place, such as age, emotional state, and learning environment.
E-learnings can increase a company's productivity by giving employees the tools and skills they need to enhance performance. Training in classrooms can be very time-consuming, boring, and costly. They may also take away from profits. E-learning gives the opportunity to learn during a person's downtime and not taken at a single location. Mobile e-learnings are starting to pop up in addition to computers. These include podcasts as well as interactive learning on smartphones. Individuals who consistently are on the go benefit from these the most. It is much easier to take trainings on one's own time than when the company sets aside classroom time. The employee will then be motivated to take these trainings instead of forced to take them. The employees will be happier and more confident in their job. No one likes to fail in front of a classroom full of other peers. E-learning helps employees test new ideas without the failing part. During an e-learning, an individual can fail. The worst case scenario is that you can always just start over. This encourages creativity and new ideas. Individuals who will be able to think outside the box without the fear of failing in front of others. New interactive e-learnings are very open and show a scenario in the workplace with different answers that do different things. On new e-learnings, there is no one correct answer. This type of e-learning will help companies succeed when implementing a differentiating business strategy. People learn from mistakes, but it's a lot easier to fail while learning during e-learning than practicing in front of other people. Just starting over is something that cannot be done in a classroom setting. An individual cannot rewind a session if they miss a key point in a classroom setting. With e-learnings, this is totally possible and encouraged. Effective e-learning help the learners retain the course content. This is done by creating an easy to understand and easy user interface. Adding multimedia and interactive scenarios are the key to holding people's attention and being able to retain the material. The e-learning should not just be black and white text. It needs to be visually appealing. The most important part is the content. This needs to be active and very thought-provoking. If all these factors are combined, then it creates a very rich learning experience that is repeatable. Creating a learning environment like this is going to help employees retain course knowledge, which produces great results. Working for a company like Best Buy has really showed me how e-learnings are beneficial. Their motto is "Knowledge is power." They really have pushed the training and believes that these will help. According to their study, 1 out of 3 associates in 2010 were stumped by questions every day. They implemented a huge trend toward e-learnings. The different departments in Best Buy all have required e-learnings. Technology is one of the fastest growing industries, which means that e-learnings are updated frequently. E-learnings have made companies like Best Buy and Apple successful. The employees are more productive, have the freedom to learn from their mistakes, and are able to retain knowledge. The combination of these outcomes creates a successful company.
Let's discuss the concept of learning. Conceptual learning or concept learning is a learning method as well as a form of critical thinking in which individuals master the ability to categorize and organize data by creating mental logic-based structures. This learning method is often compared to procedural learning, considered the most conventional and widely used method of teaching. Learning is acquiring new or modifying existing knowledge, behaviors, skills, values, or preferences, and may involve synthesizing different types of information. The ability to learn is possessed by humans, animals, and some machines. The laws, as initially formulated, are 3 in number: readiness, exercise, effect. Law of readiness. The law of readiness is explained by the statement: when an individual is ready to act or to learn, he acts or learns more effectively and with greater satisfaction than when not ready. Thus, readiness is mental set, which means that an employee can learn his lessons when he is inclined to work at them. Law to exercise. This law has 2 aspects and as such has 2 related or allied doctrines: law of use, law of disuse. The law of use states, when a modifiable connection is made between a situation and a response, that connection's strength is, other things being equal, increased. Similarly, the law of disuse states, when a modifiable connection is not made between a situation and response over a length of time, which connection's strength is decreased. Law of effect. The principle of effect is the fundamental law of teaching and learning. The law states that when pleasant or satisfying consequences follow or attend a response, the latter tends to be repeated. When painful or annoying consequences attend a response, it tends to be eliminated. Additional laws, principles. Law of primacy. Things learned first create a strong impression. What is taught must be right the first time. What the employee learns must be procedurally correct and applied the very first time. Law of recency. Things most recently learned are best remembered. Frequent review and summarization help fix in the mind the material covered. This principle often determines the sequence of lectures within a course of instruction. Law of intensity. The more intense the material taught, the more likely it will be retained. An employee will learn more from the real thing than from a substitute. In the classroom, demonstrations, skits, and role-playing increase the learning experience of employees. Law principle of freedom. Things freely learned are best learned. The greater the freedom enjoyed by the employees in the class, the greater the intellectual and moral advancement enjoyed by them. Let's move on to talk about the learning process. Employee development is designed to enable the employees to learn and be challenged in new and different ways. The learning philosophy is based on the idea that personal and professional learning is most effective when it involves hands-on experience. Mental and physical processes. When it comes to learning, everyone learns every day in their life. They learn in many ways. One way is through word association. Not many people really know what word association means. Rather, they do not take the time to examine its purpose. Reinforcement theory is the process of shaping behavior by controlling the consequences of the behavior. In reinforcement theory, a combination of rewards and/or punishments is used to reinforce desired behavior or extinguish unwanted behavior. Reinforcement, punishment, and extinction. The most important principle of reinforcement theory is, of course, reinforcement. Generally speaking, there are two types of reinforcement: positive, negative. Positive reinforcement results when the occurrence of a valued behavioral consequence has the effect of strengthening the probability of the behavior being repeated. Negative reinforcement results when an undesirable behavioral consequence is withheld, with the effect of strengthening the probability of the behavior being repeated. Schedules of reinforcement. The timing of the behavioral consequences that follow a given behavior is called the reinforcement schedule. There are two broad types of reinforcement schedules: continuous, intermittent. There are at least 4 types of intermittent reinforcement schedules: fixed interval, fixed ratio, variable interval, variable ratio. Reinforcement theory applied to organizational settings. Probably the best known application of the principles of reinforcement theory to organizational settings is called behavioral modification, or behavioral contingency management. Let's now talk about the social learning theory. In social learning theory, behavior is learned from the environment through the process of observational learning. People learn through observing others' behavior, attitudes, and outcomes of those behaviors. Modeling process. The modeling process helps to understand that not all observed behaviors could be learned effectively, nor learning can necessarily result to behavioral changes. The modeling process includes the following steps in order to determine whether social learning is successful or not. Step 1. Attention. Social cognitive theory implies that one must pay attention to learn. If one demonstrates to learn from the behavior of the model, the person that demonstrates the behavior, then one should eliminate anything that catches the attention other than him. Step 2. Retention. Retention of the newly learned behavior is necessary. Without it, learning of the behavior would not be established, and one might need to get back to observing the model again, since one was not able to store information about the behavior. Step 3. Reproduction. When one is successful in paying attention and retaining relevant information, this step requires one to demonstrate the behavior. In this phase, practice of the behavior by repeatedly doing it is important for improvement. Step 4. Motivation. Feeling motivated to repeat the behavior is what one needs in order to keep on performing it. This is where reinforcement and punishment come in. One can be rewarded by demonstrating the behavior properly and punished by displaying it inappropriately.
How do you become really good at something? Well, I can't give a specific step-by-step guide for every single person on YouTube video because it's impossible. There's a basic learning approach that applies to anything. I'll provide the model, you fill in the blanks. It works for learning guitar, tai chi, business, chess, training your cat, anything. We'll go through the 5-step process. So learning any skill happens in a pyramid. Not the normal pyramid and not a food pyramid, but a pyramid broken into chunks, each chunk representing a smaller skill that is critical for becoming proficient in the overall task. Why the gap between chunks? Learning anything new generally doesn't happen linearly. The learning process isn't like standing on an infinite escalator, though that sounds really fun. When learning anything new, there are plateaus and places where you need to extend yourself and allow room for failure. You also can't learn everything at once, so you need to start with the core concepts and skills and work your way up from there. Let's take a look at an example of the learning process with playing guitar. When you first pick up a guitar, it's fun for about 2 minutes before you realize you don't know how to play any songs or chords. You then worry about annoying everyone around you. Playing the guitar doesn't become fun until you master the first chunk, which is generally learning basic chords, finger positions, or strumming. Here's the 5-step process to learning the guitar. Define a chunk of information to learn that is just outside your current capability. Since we're starting at the very bottom, it could be anything, but you want to start with the core foundation, so either notes or chords or strumming. 2, focus on mastering that one chunk, meaning you're not going to leap from learning the solo to Stairway to Heaven right away. You're sticking with that one simple chunk until you've internalized it. Number 3, practice deliberately. Notice mistakes when they happen and correct them instead of avoiding them or working around them. Focus on making things that are uncomfortable or you're not so good at a lot better instead of avoiding them. Number 4, repeat the process until you can perform the chunk with little to no conscious effort. This frees your mind to focus on more complicated skills and move up the learning pyramid. Number 5, determine the next chunk to master and start the process all over again. This might be learning scales, finger picking, advanced chords, improvising, or different techniques. You have to start the process all over again and find the next chunk that is slightly more difficult than the one you just learned. At each stage, you have to go through the feeling of being a little bit uncomfortable, going through that boring, possibly repetitive practice, and eventually internalizing the new skill. And then repeat the process all over again. You'll find this happens in no matter what the skill is. Robert Greene, in his book Mastery, which analyzed how people rise to the top of their field from Muhammad Ali to Albert Einstein, has a great quote from that book that describes this process. If we are learning a complex skill, such as flying a jet in combat, we must master a series of simple skills, one on top of the other. Each time one skill becomes automatic, the mind is freed up to focus